Hi, welcome back to the Rod Chappell Show. This is a place where we try to bring some of the larger legal issues or the implications of those issues to people in a way that you can use it. During this election season, where we're all preparing to go vote on November the 6th, I want to introduce you to two great people from our community who are running to serve this community as the Associate Circuit Court Judge for Cole County. First, but I want to start the show with an opportunity for everybody. And we have Cotton Walker. Many of you already know folks who are in our community, and I'm sure that they've had some experience or exposure to you one way or another. But I want to start the show with an opportunity for everybody to just kind of say who you are. Okay? Gaylin, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I am Gaylin Rich Carver, and I am currently in private practice at my own law firm, Carver and Michael, where my law partner, Sarah Michael, and I practice together, and we also have Mike Dahlmeyer at our law firm as well. And I've been in private practice for the last 12 years. Before that, I was an assistant prosecuting attorney here in Cole County. And then before that, I actually was a clerk for Judge Wolf, who's Supreme Court judge. I graduated from St. Louis University Law School, where I met my husband, and we moved back here after that. I graduated from JC. I had a little bit of gap between my undergraduate degree and my law degree, and I was a teacher, actually taught at Simonson here in the Jefferson City Public School District. It was the first 3 years that Simonson was the 9th grade center when they first opened up the middle schools. And then I decided to go to law school after I taught for a while. So when I found out that Tom Sodergren was retiring, I decided to run. I am the Democratic candidate for associate judge.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Cotton?
Well, thank you. I'm Judge Cotton Walker. I'm the Jefferson City Municipal Judge the last eight years, elected actually in 2011, so 7 would be 8 if I fulfill the term through April. I previously served as the elected prosecutor in our community, and since 1994 I've served as an appointed judge prior to being elected in the municipality of Russellville. Also served as a substitute judge in Holt Summit and the judge appointed in Lowman, and substituted in Jefferson City, and served as the interim judge in Jefferson City for a while. Aside from my time on the bench and as a city prosecutor, I've maintained a civil law practice in the community since 1992 when I returned here, having graduated law school in 1991, and I worked at a small firm in Springfield, Missouri for a couple of years before I moved back here in 1992. And there's some similarities with Gaylin and I in that we have that practice and that we're from Jefferson City and returned home to serve. And I know that I'm looking forward to continuing that service, hopefully at the associate circuit level in January after the election in November.
All right. Well, thank you both. I appreciate that, and it's good for folks to have a good idea about who you are, right? Now, there's no doubt you guys are pillars of the community, have been around a long time. Tell us what you have done in terms of, let's pick an off-brand topic. Youth sports activities, right? Stuff that whether you did with your kids or other people's kids. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll start by saying that Gaylin's husband was my son's baseball coach for
Nice.
a while. So that's the beauty of growing up in Jefferson City and in Cole County. And most of my time in youth sports has been coaching basketball. I coached middle school travel teams in the 90s, and then when my kids were little, I didn't coach for a while, and then I began coaching again in the early 2000s, coaching girls and then boys, mostly middle school basketball. I've coached the varsity in off-season tournaments on occasions. It's, I guess, a feeder program to the Jeff City High School basketball program, and really enjoy that. It's time-consuming, but so rewarding. Probably one of the most rewarding experiences in that time was about 2 years ago, walking into the link when it was first opened, and watching a couple of coaches coach their kids, and then come over to me afterwards and say, "Hey, coach," and I had coached them in the 90s, and one of them I recognized, and one of them I didn't, but he remembered us coaching. It's very rewarding and a good way to give back through your family, especially when your kids are going through that like Justin did, giving back to the community and to those kids. So yeah.
Absolutely. And Gaylin, I know that you've got folks involved with sports too.
Well, I do. I can't imagine that it would be a community service for me to coach any sport based on my athletic ability. But like you said, my husband has coached my son's baseball team really since, gosh, I think even since T-ball and even up until this last baseball season, and which I have to give him credit for here because my husband never played baseball growing up.
Is
and
that right?
so he literally took it on and learned and taught himself. And for a while in the early years, he had a co-coach that helped him, Ryan Petty, who probably knows more about baseball than my husband will ever forget. And he learned a lot from him.
Cool.
I did teach dance class. I've taught dance classes before and had one that was just for children.
Okay.
So then I've been involved in ways that I can be involved with my kids, obviously. Like my son does wrestling, so both of us are involved in whatever the wrestling team needs as boosters and parents. My daughter's involved in the J Band, and so we do what we can for the J Band and involved in the boosters and helping to fundraise. I was actually corporate sponsor, or corporate chair, I forgot the name of the title, for the J-Band Booster, which meant going out into community and asking business members to contribute to the band, which is actually a really expensive endeavor. You know, they have all the props and they have the travel, they take buses when they go to their competitions and their meals, and so I've been involved in that way as opposed to actually coaching anyone in some sort of athletic team that I wouldn't probably have any skill for.
Well, sure. No,
J-Band just got back from Indianapolis.
They got back from Indianapolis
that's
last weekend. That's right. They did, and then they have one Bands of America in St. Louis tomorrow and Saturday.
Cool, cool. I think it says a lot for folks to manage a busy law practice, right, in whatever arena that is in, and then still be there for your families too. So that's good. I wanted the folks at home to have a better impression. If they hadn't seen you there, maybe they'll know a little bit more now. Here's a hot potato. Judicial independence, why is it important?
Well, it's one of the three branches of government, and so, it obviously needs to be independent from the other two branches.
Now, this is the little branch, right? This is the not big branch. This is the lesser, like, of the three, right?
Oh, nice try.
No?
Equal branches.
Co-equal.
And obviously Gaylin's right on that they're equal branches, and I appreciate what you're trying to
We saw that sneak in there.
But from time to time, the other two branches, if you will, get a little more press time, and so they use that almost like a bully pulpit to the third branch, and they attack decisions when judges in the judiciary. Number one, it's their job to interpret and uphold the law that's, if you will, written by the legislative branch, and then number two, to be immune from those other branches and the, if you will, the come and going of the feelings about those other branches, and we're not going to, in the judiciary, we're not going to respond in the press in the way that sometimes the legislative and certainly the executive branch does at times.
Oh yeah. Well, tell me, sometimes as a judge, you are able to see behaviors that might be exhibited by a lawyer in your courtroom that might not be appropriate, right? Is that something that you think that it's fair to address as a judge, maybe either with people there or on the side, or do you think that that's something that's just a matter for the bar to address?
Well, so, I think if somebody was doing something inappropriate, and a member of the bar was doing something inappropriate in your courtroom, to me it seems like the first thing that you should do is just speak directly to that individual and state, did you do this? Did you mean to do that? Because it seems like it was inappropriate, and perhaps you should reconsider what it was that you did or not do it again. Right? I mean, I think that as a judge, probably if they see a member of the bar who's doing something consistently that's inappropriate or detrimental, I mean, they have the obligation to report it to the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, who reviews, ethics of lawyers and ethic complaints that are made against lawyers and stuff. So I would think they would have a duty to do that.
Right. All right. Judge?
Yeah, no, I agree with Gaylin, and both of us being experienced litigators and having a breadth of practice in our careers that leads you to meet different types of lawyers, and just as any profession, there's lawyers who are well-versed and ethical and do their job and what have you, and then there are some who maybe don't all the time, and I agree that you should individually, if there's an instance, you should communicate with that particular attorney. But there are examples when you report to the presiding judge in your circuit or even beyond that. Most of those lawyers, in the time that I've been in practice, it takes care of themselves. They eventually don't appear in your court anymore. So.
Oh, sure. I used to have a philosophy that, you never really have to fire anybody. They always fire themselves, right?
Right.
Yeah, especially if you look at it in the right way. Cole County, big decisions come out of Cole County, right? There are opportunities where, as an associate circuit court judge, you will be working with juries. You feel comfortable doing that? Obviously you've been before them in terms of presenting evidence to a jury. Do you see any problems with that, or any issues that you would take on or do differently?
Well, this was an issue that came up at the last forum that we did, which is, I'm not, and I probably need to look into this, but exactly how we're picking our jury pool. Mm-hmm. So, somebody gets on jury duty. Mm-hmm. They first saw, this is my understanding, so I could be, but it's my understanding they send out questionnaires, and they pull the names out of voter registration and driver's license. Yeah. And so when they send the questionnaire, people are supposed to fill it out and send it back in. Mm-hmm. And so, if they have bad addresses or whatever, somebody doesn't get their mail, or they're out of town for a significant period of time, they may not get that, might not send it in.
Okay.
And so then out of that, we pick sort of a jury panel. Then they usually serve for I want to think it's 3 months.
Wow.
So for those 3 months, they're supposed to call into a telephone number to find out at a certain time and day, to find out, hey, do I need to show up for jury? Okay. Right? Mm-hmm. So then if there's going to be a jury trial on Monday, let's say, they're supposed to call in on Friday, and they'll say, yes, you need to show up at 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And so I know that one of the issues, my husband's a public defender here in Cole County, Miller, and Montauk counties. And one of the issues has been that there is a lack of minorities in the panel. Mm-hmm. And so that has been an issue. Yeah. And what we need to do to fix that, I don't know. We have 16% of the population in Cole County is African American.
Yep.
And so if you have a panel of 100, that would be 16 people should probably be.
Mm-hmm. On average, right?
Yeah, on average, right? Maybe 15, maybe 17, but somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And when we are lucky if we have 2 minorities or 3 minority in a panel of 60 that show up, or 70, I think that we need to take a good hard look at how we're picking the panel to come in. And because I was on jury duty once, federal jury duty.
Oh, nice.
It's been several years ago, and I called in. There's this perception that, attorneys, we get out of jury duty, but that's not really true. And my attitude was I'm probably not going to get picked for the jury because one of the 2 attorneys is probably going to kick me off because I'm an attorney. Mm-hmm. But just showing up to give them the number of people that they need to choose from is part of the civic duty. And so, I think when people feel well, I've been on the jury, if you serve on a jury panel for 3 months and you never get picked for a jury, but you show up every time, you're doing your civic duty because they have to have a decent number of people to pick from, And so I showed up just like I was supposed to do and never got picked, but that's okay. It was doing same with our assistant at Carver, Michael. She was on Cole County jury duty, Mm-hmm. She would miss a couple hours once every other week or so, of work, but I was you got to go do that. Of course, she didn't get picked.
Right.
Probably because the attorneys found out where she worked. But that's fine. You know what I mean? Just showing up was part of the civic duty.
Absolutely. And I value that. Everybody should do their job as a citizen. You should vote, and you should be on a jury, right?
Yep.
Don't shirk your duty. What do you think?
Well, I definitely agree, and one of the questions that I get most often, serving just as municipal judge, where, by the way, we don't conduct jury trials, is when people get the jury duty notice, they call me, as if I have some power to get them out of jury duty, or there's a card or a magic wand or something. And anytime, even if it's a close friend or I don't remember a relative asking me to get out of jury duty, but as I say, no, of course, even if I could do that, no way, because I agree I agree with you, Rod, that's a civic duty, and there have been studies on the Cole County juries where they're not representative of a jury of your peers, which to me is representative of Cole County. I know that Gaylin and I have been together so much, she's heard this before, but it shouldn't be for me, civil or criminal or whatever, if somebody of my age and education or zip code or race, that doesn't mean I should get 12, 52-year-old lawyers on my jury. That's not a jury of my peers. It's the community that should be represented in those jury pools. And then it's up to learned attorneys who can try jury cases to make sure justice is done in those cases.
Absolutely. Do occasionally, as a judge, you might be called upon to make a ruling. I mean, go imagine that. Whether it's on evidence or on an issue, if there's no jury present, you might actually have to determine what the facts are after hearing from both of the parties. Is that something that you would have a problem doing if there was an unpopular decision, but that was right under the facts of the case or the law? Does that? How do you confront with those two things?
Yeah, it's not hard to do because it's your job, but there are times when maybe a decision might be unpopular. Sometimes the community misunderstands that independence factor of the judge, and people come in and see the judge in the municipal court, see the judge sitting in the city courthouse or at the county courthouse, and think, well, they're the same branch as the police, for example.
Right.
But
in some jurisdictions they are. But go ahead.
Okay. I think we had that conversation in this room a few years ago. But where, as we said, some courts, especially in North St. Louis, were doing it wrong, but
yes.
Not protecting the constitutional rights of litigants. But when each case starts, the judge has a duty to weigh the credibility of the evidence, including witnesses, under oath. And I mean, there are times, whether it's popular or unpopular, a decision I make, I tell the litigants why. Now, municipal court's a court not of record. There's anyone, it's open court, anybody can be there, but there's not a court reporter in our municipal courts because there's a trial de novo right, which people can exercise if they, that is, if a defendant loses the case or is convicted under my decision, then they have a trial de novo right. The city doesn't have a trial de novo right, but where they can have another trial. But my point of saying that is there are people who sometimes have interest in a case, even if they're not a party. And if I weigh the evidence or the credibility of the evidence, including the witnesses, when I make a decision, sometimes I tell them why. Which it can include, I did not find that witness testimony to be credible. So, and that's sometimes hard for them to hear, not hard to say when it's clear for the judge.
Right. And Gaylin, what do you think?
Well, I think that a lot of people, and I see this even with my clients when I go to court, they think that every court case or every case that's being heard is going to have 40, 50 people sitting in the audience, or it's going to be in front of a jury.
Right.
And the truth is, jury trials are actually sort of the minority of the types of cases that a judge hears than when they actually have a jury. And most of the decisions are done after a hearing, after a bench trial, or after oral arguments or something on a particular motion or particular issue. And so most cases are actually decided by the judge. And the judge should be independent and not be under political pressure. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why, however it was 70, 80 years ago when they started the Missouri Courts Plan, so that our Supreme Court judges and our appellate court judges are not elected, but are appointed under a very particular system, of people submitting their applications, reviewing, submitting 3 names to the governor to pick, is so that they're not under the political pressure of having to run for office, making a decision based upon, I don't want to make these people mad because then they might, run against me or have somebody, I might lose my... So as a judge, that we are part of the political system in the sense that we we run on a party, we run on a ticket, and we run every 4 years. Circuit judges run every 6 years, but we have to be able to set ourselves apart and say, I'm going to make a decision based upon the facts and the law and not on any political pressure.
Well, all right. Well, just tell me how you're going to rule on possession charges.
Well, obviously, with each case, you have to hear the evidence and apply the law. And Gaylin and I've had this discussion probably on the record and off the record that we agree that because of the importance of the independence of the judiciary, that perhaps judge elections, municipal elections in Jeff City are nonpartisan county, state judge elections are partisan, if you will. There's a party designation that you can or will make, but that perhaps if the elections are maintained, they should all be nonpartisan. Right. The Missouri plan that she talked about is touted as a nonpartisan plan. I've had experiences with friends of mine in other communities where it was very political, though, so I don't know that it, in practice, always removes the politics. That doesn't mean in Cole County we couldn't support a plan that is less political than partisan elections, but I like the concept of the community electing our leaders, including our judges. I don't necessarily agree that it should be a partisan election, though.
Okay. Well, we actually have judicial rules of ethics that both as candidates and as judges we are supposed to follow. And one of those is that we can't just make a blanket statement to answer your question, which I know you knew this, Rob. But you know, I can't just say everybody that has this kind of charge is going to have this, you know. I mean, and because we're not supposed to make pledges or promises while we're running for office. And so, and you know, and I don't know, you know, and you asked kind of what would be your ruling on possession. I mean, there's a lot of different, there's minors in possession of alcohol, there's possession of felony drug amounts, there's possession of marijuana, so I think you have to just take each case as it comes to you and based upon the facts.
Absolutely, absolutely. Is there one aspect about the law that made you guys become lawyers?
Well, I'll go back to one of my interviews when I was first out of law school. I went into law for public service, not the same necessarily as elected positions or serving as a judge or prosecutor, but it was to give back and to help people. That's why I went into the law. And the question from one of my law school or first experiences interviewing for a law firm was, I was in a firm and I knew what the firm did, and they had a particular area of law, and I gave the answer, to almost a similar question. I wanted to, you know, help my fellow citizens in my community. I want to make sure that if I can help somebody out of a problem or help mom and pop business on the corner or do this, and the partner in this firm laughed and said, "Well, I think you're in the wrong firm," then, because, and to which I answered, "I'm sure I am now."
Right.
And so that's definitely why I went into the practice of law.
Perfect. And Gaylin, how about you?
So I probably, neither of my parents are lawyers, but I sort of grew up around legal, you know, the government. Both of them were sort of government servants. My dad was the county collector here for years. So I grew up kind of around government. And so I think it was something that I had always considered and thought about as an undergraduate, and then decided to be a teacher, but always kind of thought I might go back to that. And so when I did go back to law school, and I have to say, I really liked law school. And I really liked I liked the learning and the way that it made you think about problems. I like the research and writing aspect of law school. I enjoyed going to my classes. Yeah. In fact, I went for an interview. So at the end of your first year of law school, you know, then these big firms try to interview you to get a clerkship in the summer. And so I went to this interview with one of the big firms in St. Louis, and one of the associates that took us out to lunch said, you know, well, what do you think about law school? And I said, well, I love it. I love class. And I didn't get that job, and I think it's because her reaction to me was like, she didn't believe me.
Right.
And I think she didn't, I think she thought I was lying, right? She either thought, one, I was lying, or two, she's such a nerd that we don't want her for the summer.
Not going to be any fun.
It's not going to be any fun. So, you know, it's been fun. I enjoy like a new legal issue. And if I have a case come in that I don't really know a lot about, you know, I've never done that type of case, never done that aspect of law. Right. So then I really enjoy like actually learning about it and doing the research and becoming more knowledgeable about it. And I think that's probably one of the things I like the best about being a lawyer and being in the law field.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. In fact, again, Gaylin and I discussed one time Court of Appeals work or jury trial work, that when you are that engrossed in a case, you're a subject matter expert. Right. Often even more, if you're the lawyer, even more than those on the bench, even the Court of Appeals bench, which is really smart lawyers, right?
Yeah,
but,
sure.
That is intellectually stimulating to be able to know what you're talking about on an individual case with the facts and the law that applies to that situation.
Absolutely. You know, let's do this. You want to do rock, paper, scissors for who's going to be judge? Best 2 out of 3? 5 out of 7?
That's probably not the best way.
Oh, okay. Do you think voting is a pretty good way to do that, at least in this election, this time?
Yes, sir.
All right. How about 1 minute each telling the people at home why they need to come out and vote November 6th?
I think that sometimes people are upset about things that they're elected, and this is just in general, right?
Sure.
Is that what you're asking in general, why they should vote? Okay.
Yeah, and particularly
So-
in this race. But
Okay,
yeah.
well, let's talk general, first of all, which is, I think sometimes people are unhappy with things that their elected officials do. They're unhappy maybe with the president or the Congress or whatever, and they feel like, that their vote doesn't necessarily count. I mean, how many people voted in the presidential race for one of the 2 presidential candidates, so they feel like their one little vote doesn't matter. And the thing is that you as an individual in your community are you're more impacted by decisions that are made by your local government elected officials, whether it be city council, whether it be your state representative, whether it be even your county collector or your recorder of deeds or your associate judge if you have to end up being in front of a judge. And so those are the most important elections for you to vote in. Not that you shouldn't vote in the presidential, because obviously you go to vote, you vote on all of them. But so the feeling when people feel like, oh, my vote doesn't count, but it does when you talk about a local election. Yeah. And local elections are won or lost sometimes by 4, 5, 6, 700 votes. Yeah. And so your vote does matter. And so you should educate yourself in all the candidates and say, I need to know about all the local candidates, especially the local candidates, because one, we typically don't have the kind of money to do the kind of advertising that some of the other bigger candidates do. And so, and because we, meaning the local officials, have more of an impact on individuals' lives and in the community. And so those are the races you should vote in.
All right.
Well, yes, the broader answer has to do with your civic responsibility and living in our country, that you should vote every time. Yeah. Definitely November 6th. There's complex and important issues up and down the ballot. And in the local races, I agree with Gaylin that you're more likely to be individually impacted by local officials, your state rep who may represent you in the Capitol, or even the municipal elections coming in April, or your county prosecutor or the associate circuit judge. And you want to know that somebody who's going to practice in that and preside in that, what I call the real people law, that associate division, have the experience, but also the connection to the community to know what expectations you have of the judge in that position, and the vote tells us that, and then also that you have or that they have of representing the community and their expectations, and I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't vote in each election. When you're running a political campaign, not on the $1 million of level like some of our candidates that we see on lots of airways now that Gaylin alluded to, but there's an opportunity in local elections to know your candidates too, through something like this, through the candidate forums, being involved, being out in the community, going door to door. Gaylin and I are easy to find. Coffee. The editor had the coffee last week, and we had a few people show up. But Lincoln's had a couple opportunities to see both of us, or you can find us at the courthouse because we're both practicing attorneys. So. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, that's the Rod Chapel Show. We've got 2 members of our community who want to serve the community as the Associate Circuit Court Judge here in Cole County. It's important that you take a moment and not only get to know these 2 candidates, get to know those who are running for prosecutor, get to know those who are running for the 59th and the 60th, and if you're outside of this local Cole County or Jefferson City area, get to know whatever politician it is that's there for whatever office. Look at the statewide ballot initiatives, whether it's the amendments, the propositions, the federal elections that are going to take place. They'll all have an impact on you. And it's okay if you vote and you don't get the person that you wanted. Maybe you'll be closer to the issues, get engaged locally, and make the change that you'd like to see. But occasionally, your candidate will win. And not only that, the issues that are important to you will be heard. Society will be better, your country will be better, your community and family will thrive in a way that you think is important. On November the 6th, go vote. And if you can't be there, vote absentee. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. You can call up and get your ballot mailed to you and send it back. Take this opportunity to be a good citizen. Thanks for being on the Rod Chappell Show, and we look forward to seeing you soon.